Okay, we're back with 2nd Chronicles chapter 30, just finishing off the last little bit. The entire assembly then decided to continue the festival another 7 days, so they celebrated joyfully for another week. King Hezekiah gave the people 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep for offerings, and the officials donated 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep. Meanwhile, many more priests purified themselves. The entire assembly of Judea rejoiced, including the priests, the Levites, all who came from the land of Israel, the foreigners who came to the festival, and all those who lived in Judea. There was a great joy in the city, for Jerusalem had not seen a celebration like this since the days of Solomon, King David's son. Then the Levitical priest stood and blessed the people, and God heard them from his holy dwelling in heaven. 2nd Chronicles chapter 31. Hezekiah's religious reforms. And now when the festival ended, the Israelites who attended went to all the towns of Judea, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh, and they smashed the sacred pillars, cut down the Asherah poles, and removed the pagan shrines and altars. After this, the Israelites returned to their own towns and homes. Hezekiah then organized the priests and Levites into divisions to offer the burnt offerings and peace offerings, to worship and give thanks and praise to the Lord at the gates of the temple. Then the king also made a personal contribution of animals for the daily morning and evening burnt offerings, as well as for the weekly Sabbath festivals and monthly new moon festivals, and for the other annual festivals as required in the law of the Lord. In addition, he required the people in Jerusalem to bring the prescribed portion of their income to the priests and Levites so they could devote themselves fully to the law of the Lord. The people responded immediately and generously with the first of their crops and grain, and new wine, olive oil, honey, and all the produce of their fields. They brought a tithe for all they owned. The people who had moved to Judea from Israel and the people of Judea themselves brought the tithes of their cattle and sheep and the tithe of the things that had been dedicated to the Lord their God, and they piled them up in great heaps. Excuse me. The first of these tithes was brought in late spring, then the heaps continued to grow until early autumn. When Hezekiah and his officials came and saw these huge piles, they thanked the Lord and his people of Israel. Where did all this come from? Hezekiah asked the priests and Levites. And Azariah, the high priest from the family of Zadok, replied, Since the people began bringing their gifts to the Lord's temple, we have had enough to eat and plenty to spare, for the Lord has blessed his people. Hezekiah decided to have storerooms prepared in the temple of the Lord, and this was done, and then all the gifts and tithes were faithfully brought to the temple. Kohathah, the Levite, was put in charge, assisted by his brother Shimei. The supervisors under them were Jehiel, Azazah, Nahath, Asahel, Jeremoth, Jozabad, Eliel, Ishamaka, Mahath, and Benah. These appointments were made by the king Hezekiah and Azariah, the chief official of the temple of God. Kor, son of Imah, the Levite, who was the gatekeeper at the east gate, was put in charge of distributing the freewill offerings of the Lord, the gifts and the things that had been dedicated to the Lord. His faithful assistants were Eden, Menanam, Jeshua, Shema, Amara, and Shechemneh. They distributed the gifts among the families of the priests in their towns by their divisions, dividing the gifts fairly among the young and old alike. They also distributed the gifts to all males 3 years old and older, regardless of their place in the genealogical records, who came daily to the Lord's temple to perform their official duties by their divisions. And they distributed gifts to the priests who were listed in the genealogical records by families, and to the Levites 20 years or older who were listed according to their jobs and their divisions. Food allotments were also given to all the families listed in the genealogical records, including the little babies, the wives, and the sons and daughters, for they had all been faithful in purifying themselves. As for the priests, the descendants of Aaron, who were living in the open villages around the towns, men were appointed to distribute portions to every male among the priests and to all the Levites listed in the genealogical records. In this way, King Hezekiah handled the distribution throughout all Judea, doing what was pleasing and good in the sight of the Lord his God. In all that he had done in the service of the temple of God and his efforts to follow the law and the commands, Hezekiah sought his God wholeheartedly. As a result, he was very successful. 2nd Chronicles chapter 32. Assyria invaded Judea. After Hezekiah had faithfully carried out his work, King Sennacherib Sennacherib, sorry, I cannot pronounce that, of Assyria invaded Judea. He laid siege to the fortified cities, gave orders for his army to break through their walls. When Hezekiah realized that Sennacherib, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, I apologize, also intended to attack Jerusalem, he consulted with his officials and military advisors and then decided to stop the flow of the springs outside the city. They organized a huge work crew to stop the flow of the springs, cutting off the brook that ran through the fields, for they said, "Why should the kings of Assyria come here and find plenty of water?" Then Hezekiah further strengthened his defenses by repairing the wall wherever it was broken down, and by adding to the fortifications and constructing a second wall outside the first. He also reinforced the Milo in the city of David and manufactured a large number of weapons and shields. He appointed military officers over the people and asked them to assemble before him in the square at the city gate. Then Hezekiah encouraged them with this address: "Be strong and courageous, so don't be afraid of the king of Assyria or his mighty army, for there is a power far greater on our side. He may have a great army, but they are just men. We have the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles for us." These words greatly encouraged the people. Sennacherib threatens Jerusalem. Then King Sennacherib of Assyria, while still besieging the town of Lachish, sent officials to Jerusalem with this message for Hezekiah to all the people of the city. This is what King Sennacherib of Assyria says: "What are you trusting in that makes you think you can survive my siege of Jerusalem?" Hezekiah has said, "The Lord our God will rescue us from the king of Assyria." Surely Hezekiah is misleading you, sentencing you to death by famine and thirst. Surely you must realize that Hezekiah is the very person who destroyed all the Lord's shrines and altars. He commanded Judea and Jerusalem to worship at only the one altar at the temple and to make sacrifices on it alone. Surely you must realize that I and the other kings of Assyria before me have done to all the people of the earth. Were any of the gods of those nations able to rescue the people from my power? Name just one time when my God anywhere was able to rescue his people from me. What makes you think your God can do any better? Don't let Hezekiah fool you. Don't let him destroy you like this. I say it again, no God of any nation has ever yet been able to rescue his people from me and my ancestors. How much less will your God rescue you from my power?" And Sennacherib's officials further marked the Lord God and his servant Hezekiah, heaping insult upon insult. The king also sent letters scorning the Lord, the God of Israel. He wrote, "Just as the God of all the other nations failed to rescue their people from my power, so the God of Hezekiah will also fail." The Assyrian officials who brought the letter shouted this in the Hebrew language to the people gathered on the walls of the city, trying to terrify them so it would be easier to capture the city. These officials talked about the God of Jerusalem as though he were one of the pagan gods made by human hands. Then King Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz, cried out in prayer to God in heaven, and the Lord sent an angel who destroyed the Assyrian army with all its commanders and officers. So Sennacherib returned home in disgrace to his own land, and when he entered the temple of the god, some of his own sons killed him there with a sword. That is how the Lord rescued Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem from King Sennacherib of Assyria and from all the others who threatened them. So there was peace at the last throughout the land, and from then on King Hezekiah became highly respected among the surrounding nations, and many gifts from the Lord arrived at Jerusalem, the valuable presents for King Hezekiah too. Okay, and with that I'll finish off the second half in a bit.